Advantage, Marsh McClendon Agency. Our series sponsors are Carolina Hurricanes, City Club Raleigh, and Green Resources. And our diamond sponsors, and so to make some comments from our diamond sponsor for Marsh McClendon Agency, please welcome Kelly Christopoulos.
Hi, thank you, Jay. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. As Jay said, my name is Kelly Christopoulos. I'm with Marsh McClendon Agency in Raleigh. I want to thank the Chamber real quick for putting together these events and scheduling it for us and switching virtually at the last minute. You guys are doing a great job. We always enjoy participating and sponsoring these events. And I, for one, am so looking forward to hearing Janet Cowell speak about her leadership journey with Dix Park Conservancy and as first elected female North Carolina State Treasurer. I'm very interested to hear that. So I'll be very brief here with my intro. Marsh McClendon Agency, we do offer risk prevention and insurance needs to middle market companies. I specialize in employee health and benefits, but on my team, we also offer retirement, cyber insurance, property and casualty insurance, executive benefits, among others. But what I really want to encourage you all today on this call is something I just learned about yesterday, and it's pretty exciting. Next Thursday, February 17th, is Random Act of Kindness Day, so mark it on your calendar. I encourage you to spend your day or the entire week just doing random acts of kindness to whoever crosses your path. It can be very simple, that costs no money, just some ideas. We were kind of bouncing around internally at Marsh McClendon. Write a colleague a handwritten note, tell them thank you. Schedule some time to volunteer at your local food bank or animal shelter. Donate some clothes you no longer need. Call a friend you haven't spoken to in a few months just to catch up. Or my favorite one, pull in your neighbor's trash cans after trash pickup. They will love that. Again, it can be very simple. A little goes a long way. So mark your calendar, Thursday, February 17th, the Random Act of Kindness Day. Thank you so much for letting me speak very quickly, and I will hand it back over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we're going to hear from Cheryl Scanlon, the president of C3 Advantage.
Thank you, Jay. It's wonderful to be with you all this morning. Good morning, Janet. Go Dix Park. So I speak to people all across the country who are leaving their work positions because of simple issues that, if addressed, they would stay. And I don't want this to happen to our great companies here in Raleigh. Recruitment and retention ratios have flipped. They used to be 30 to 70. Now they're 70 to 30. A CEO recently resigned from a $400 million business, and with 2 weeks, 4 more executives resigned as well. On a smaller scale, 16 members left a company of 25. The company can't catch its breath. In our efforts to address the challenges of people leaving, we can inadvertently forget what's happening to the faithful ones remaining. My desire is to alert us to the opportunities we can create to tend to the well-being of our people to help prevent more departures. I'm going to share 3 ways your people are impacted, followed by 3 ways you can support them. How are your employees impacted? Loss of friendship. Even with COVID isolation, people become friends, then family. How does it feel when we lose a friend? We're wondering if they're making the right decision to stay. You know, the grass is always greener runs very deep in the human psyche, as does FOMO. Add reflection time COVID is creating, space to wonder, ask questions. Well, this can lead to formulating plans for their own exit. And finally, new work pressures. The work still needs to get done. Employees will plug the holes that are left, but at what cost? Disrupted routines, new learning curves, and the no end in sight to the changes can create a real drag on employee morale. Well, how can you respond? First, recognize the employee that's leaving. Show your appreciation. By doing so, you bridge an emotional gap for the employees that are remaining with you. Second, connect to the employees directly impacted by the departure. Sit down with them one-to-one. Give them some airtime. Too often we try to avoid these conversations thinking it's going to make things worse when actually it can make things better. This bit of process time helps them to feel lighter and more connected to you. And finally, prevent default assignments. Communicate with team members in advance of filling those holes and make sure there's time for input and questions. And finally, make sure if this is a temporary measure that you come back and revisit the time frame for this and what can happen longer term. As a leader, I know you're tired. I work with you every day and I'm empathetic. I also want to help you avoid more unnecessary challenges because your fatigue wins out over making fans of your current employees. This is where coaching can be so helpful. A monthly or bi-monthly conversation with an executive coach can clear the cobwebs and put a little bit more pep back in your step so you're ready to face what's next. The energy for your business comes from you. If you're depleted, your business is in trouble. You need energy to take care of your people, and as you do, the business will take care of itself. Kimberly's posted a link to an article in the chat for a deeper and encouraging dive on the subject of converting the Great Resignation into the Great Designation, your company. Thank you for your time. Jay, back to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And as always, it's great to see you. All right. Well, we at First Citizens Bank, as always, are honored to be the presenting sponsor of the C-Suite's Perspective again in 2022. It's always great to be able to hear firsthand from top leaders in our community. As many of you have heard, First Citizens recently completed our merger with CIT Group that was completed in January. And as a result, First Citizens Bank is still the largest family-controlled bank in the United States. We're a top 20 U.S. bank with over $100 billion in assets, and we're very proud to continue to make Raleigh our headquarters. Over the next year, we're going to be bringing together some really neat products, services, and operations of First Citizens and CIT. Together, we're going to bring a network of over 600 branches in over 22 states. Our strong commercial banking segment is going to be able to provide a wide array of best-in-class lending, leasing, banking services to both middle market companies and small business companies from coast to coast. Our specialists are going to continue to bring a depth of expertise and help businesses and individuals meet their goals, whatever industry they're in, and are going to continue to strengthen our commitment to giving back by investing in our communities, such as our involvement with the Raleigh Chamber. And when it's all said and done, we're still going to be the First Citizens you've all come to know. And again, First Citizens name and branch network here in North Carolina will stay the same, and our associates will remain committed to providing all of you the service and advice you've come to expect. We're just now able to give you a little bit more opportunities to manage and build your business. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our main speaker, Janet Cowell, the CEO and president of Dix Park Conservancy. Dix Park is a nonprofit that works in partnership with the City of Raleigh in efforts to create Dorothea Dix Park, a 308-acre site with a dramatic landscape and a complex historical legacy 1 mile from downtown. Cowell serves as the director on the boards of the James River Group Insurance, Channel Advisors, New Republic Partners, as well as independent chair for IFM's Global Infrastructure Fund Investors Advisory Committee. Cowell held public office in North Carolina for 15 years, including 8 as our state treasurer. The first woman elected treasurer of North Carolina, she managed over $100 billion in assets and health and retirement benefits for over 900,000 members. Cowell's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and earned an MBA and MA in International Studies from the Wharton School of Business and the Lauder Institute. Please join me in welcoming Janet Cowell.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate the Chamber inviting me to speak to everybody this morning, and I'm excited to share more about Dix Park. I will say I'll be working with the Chamber on the Raleigh Parks Bond, which all of you will have the opportunity to vote in the fall. And of course, I would encourage you to vote yes on that. Part of Raleigh's what an amazing town we live in. So many different amenities, the parks, the trees, the greenery of Raleigh. I think one of the things that really draws people here and people remark on. So I hope that you will support that as part of a growing, sophisticated city. And so I will look forward to working with the Chamber. And I appreciate all of you who have supported Dix Park. As you know, we are a public-private partnership. So we are raising funds from the community to help build this park, of course, with the City of Raleigh being the owner, and they're putting in a lot of resources, but it's a community effort. So really appreciate our corporate partners and those of you, and think about ways you could bring your employees out to the park, do a volunteer day, make a contribution, et cetera. So I won't be talking specifically about all those today, but I just want you to at least know some of the structures and call to action. I'm going to talk more specifically about the park. I know part of this is about sharing leadership journeys and perspectives. And I was going to do that a little bit uniquely this morning in that I have a 99-year-old friend named Lou. And Lou and I, over the past few years, he lives in California, but this has evolved. We write each other 2 to 3 times a week. And Lou was, I think, brilliant to start with and is undiminished in his intellectual capacity. And so it has been a fascinating correspondence, really. I've visited him a couple of times in the last few years, including once after COVID. But to get the perspective of a basically, centenarian, somebody who's been on this planet for about 100 years, and his perspectives as we correspond and talk about, life and leadership and Dix Park and all of those things. So, and I'll just give you a few more facts about Lou, which are relevant to some of the lessons and perspectives. He grew up, he was French speaking. So he grew up in Canada in a French community on the drought-stricken plains. He survived dust bowls in the Great Depression. He is still a practicing Catholic and served in World War II and was in Germany. We found one of our common points. I was an exchange student in Germany, and I looked at a map on his wall when I visited, and he had been stationed literally like maybe 30 miles when in the 1940s in Germany when he was in the military post-World War II, and learned German. So we do speak German, and he's very educated, speaks Russian, throws Latin around. He became a doctor, spent his career as a doctor, and then retired, and has 4 children. I really got to know him because I was friends with one of his children, but I think now our friendship has really eclipsed, the original. So that's sort of the landscape. So the first lesson that I've learned from this 99-year-old friend is just, being open to the relationship at all, right? I mean, I know a lot of us all have networks of folks that we use to support ourselves and gain perspectives on our work. I'm part of a group called Onboard NC, right, which is women on corporate boards, and it's really valuable and very supportive group of women, helping women get on board seats. I know there are CEO circles where CEOs get together, and all of you probably have college alumni groups, et cetera. And I think those are all really strong and amazing, things to do. It's always interesting when you have relationships that don't fit into any easy bucket and maybe atypical. Learning from, children, the incarcerated, sort of maybe folks that aren't as valued by society in general and aren't viewed as having as much to say. I know Lou has said, he feels like no one asks his opinion anymore. Sometimes he feels like he's the piano in the living room and everybody's moving around him and here he sits. But, I think being open to a cross-country correspondence with a 99-year-old, a lot of my friends, even his own family. I mean, if you took stereotypes, right, you would say, she must be a gold digger. Like, especially you'll find out gold digging was one of his hobbies. Are they open enough to even be supportive of this correspondence without being suspicious that this is all about, you trying to get into his will or something, nefarious. So I think just this idea of an open mind that we should all be bringing into our work as to where the partnerships are going to be, where the wisdom is found, and trying to come at that openly. So another one, this is maybe pretty obvious from a 99-year-old, but things that endure. This was a quote from an email in early December, and he said, I have a thing about gold. I have dug and found a lot of it in my 25 years of mining in my retirement. I remember he lived in Sacramento, so he would go up to the gold hills of California and dig for nuggets. And he said, gold is the only thing that never corrodes or tarnishes. Time does not affect it. And of course, you know, when you're 100 years old and you've seen all the things that have come and gone and what endures, I really love his kind of attachment, you know, or at least admiration, I guess, of gold. He's since given away everything he owns, right? Lives in a retirement center. But I love the idea of quality, and that's both in carefully selecting, right, your employees, that input Cheryl talked about. You know, even at Dix, right, the quality of the craftsmanship, really honoring and restoring buildings that have been there, of course, at Dix since the 1850s. So just that idea of things that endure and quality over quantity. Here's another observation from Lou. This was in last August. He sent me an email and he said, this afternoon, I spent a couple hours out on the deck. There were a few birds, but there was the ceaseless to and fro of traffic on the elevated freeway across the estuary. He lives north of the Golden Gate Bridge, so this is all kind of Northern California. Rushing, rushing, busy, busy. To what end? To gain more of this world's pelf? How better to be a farmer a century ago and work the land with horses, have a few cows, chickens, a vegetable garden, and follow the seasons in the slow passing of time. A vanished world. Are we happier now? Now, I would say, he asked a good question, right? And some of that may be a little bit of the classic older person, you know, reflecting on times gone by. But I think this idea that we only have a brief time on this earth, and how do you selectively think about where you're spending your time and to what end? And I think when you're 99 and you've shed all of your earthly possessions and you find yourself in a, you know, assisted living facility, even with supportive children and others, you're alone, you really, you know, have to think about where did you spend your time? You know, did you make good choices? I will say, speaking to, you know, my choices to even run Dix Park, when I was leaving public office, and I was very honored to serve for 15 years, and I appreciate all of you who may have supported me in that elected office. It was a demanding role, you know, great people. Politics was already changing back, you know, 5-7 years ago. And I decided I would try to find, you know, follow my values and what did I really want to do. And I did a value exercise, which I would encourage all of you who can take a moment of reflection to sit down. And some of the things that came out for me were a sense of place. I really valued environments with unique character, often historical, creative, humanistic environments that foster community. And this was all way before I was, you know, took the job at Dix. I love nature, a place to be outside, of human relationships, where you can experience moments of peace, beauty, and solitude. Service, focus on substantive issues that create meaningful outcomes for others. Take tangible actions that can help the underserved. So I think just in terms of me and thinking about where did I want to spend my time, in a world where politics seems to be sometimes spinning out of control and vitriolic, and I thought, okay, do something really tangible in a park that is easier to bring people together around a park than many other, right, debating healthcare policy or pension policy. I think it's actually, when I was volunteering with the park, one of the most meaningful, I would say, multiracial dialogues. As you'll see in my slides, you know, it was originally a plantation. There are descendants of the enslaved and descendants of the slave owners who work together and have dialogues about, you know, their history and shared history. It was a very hopeful place that I did feel like could foster a sense of belonging and community in Raleigh and the state of North Carolina. And so for me, you know, my answer to Lou's, you know, maybe rustic farm life was Dix Park. That's about as rural as I'm probably going to get, but certainly brings some of that vision of slowing down, seasonality, and appreciating the community where you are. So my final kind of observations and correspondence with Lou goes to this concept of ora e labora, which, right, is a Benedictine rule for monks, but prayer and work. And I think as we curate our lives, we think about that a lot externally in the West, making better selections of how you spend your time. You know, how many boards are you going to be on? How much volunteer, how many activities are your children on? But I think there's also curating your inner life. And I think this is something, since leaving office, I've tried to have, with more time, focus on, and I think is critical for both, you know, personal well-being and leadership. Going back to Lou, he said he has two prayers. Remember, he's French. He said, and I know that Jesus spoke French, maybe with a Jewish accent, but we're, you know, absolutely was brought up with two prayers, the Our Lord's Prayer and the Ave Maria at his mother's knee. And he talked about, and he gave me a rosary. And I was asking him, how long did it take you to say these prayers? And he talked about during those dust bowls in the Western Plains, how it would just black out and they would all drop to their knees and just keep saying a prayer until the dust bowl ended. I mean, it's just, you know, stunning what people have lived through in the past century. But in terms of trying to curate your internal life, that's probably a much bigger conversation than a chamber C-suite talk. But I do think at least being aware of the activity going on in your mind. Cynthia Bourgeot is an Episcopal priest that I've read a lot of. And she said, you know, without spiritual practice, the typical human mind can't focus on anything more than 2 minutes. And she thought, that's hogwash. I know that I can focus on something more than 2 minutes. And she started looking out the window of the car, and sure enough, right, her mind's going all over the place. She's thinking about this and that. She can't hold a thought. For any of you who've tried to meditate, you know this challenge. So I do think some sort of practice, and again, this can be secular, it can be, you know, spiritual, of discipline of mind and how you cultivate that is worthwhile. Another thought that I really learned from, I think, Catholic practice and even monastic practice, last Easter, I tried to do keep the canonical hours. And that is where you do, right, fixed times of daily prayer. You know, one of those things is to say the monks did this because nothing you're doing is important enough that you can't interrupt it through prayer. And again, secularly, it could be something else, but I love this idea that don't get overly attached to what you are actually doing, you know, taking these breaks and stepping away and then coming back as a practice and discipline is worthwhile. The other thing that I, you know, learned about the whole monastic is that they rotated work so that no one would ever associate themselves overly with work. Say a monk was really good at wine making, well, they would let him make wine, but he would have to rotate through other tasks so that there was not this, you know, attachment. I think even for me, being in public office, it's often easy to get caught up in, you know, oh, I'm an elected official and I get the word honorable in front of my name, and that elected office is a robe you can take on, take off, and to try to be detached from these things. So those are just, I said, some of the reflections, conversations from a 99-year-old that have helped me over the last couple of years. And before I shift to the Dix Park part of this, I'll just close with a quote. Lou is always saying, if I be spared, because when you're 99, you never know, right, what's going to happen on the next day. And he said last July, the pilgrim's way was never meant to be easy. So be of good courage. This life is but a fleeting instant. We shall see wonders if we but stay steadfast to the end. Gott mit uns, God be with us. So with that, if you want to tee up, we have a video, a short clip from Dix Park.
Thank you for staying with us live here on the Weather Channel. I'm Justin Michaels in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're on the fun side of Winter Storm Jasper, and you can see our entire hill of tobogganers and sledders. Everybody wave to the Weather Channel. All right, so on the count of 3, I'm going to count down, and we're all going to go. We're all going to rip down this hill. Okay, you ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, let's go! Oh, that was fun. What'd you guys think? Was that? Hey, that was worth doing, right? Did you guys have fun?
I'm just glad there are no trees in the way, no roads, no cars, because nobody had a helmet on there.
I thought it was fantastic.
Good time though, and let me tell you something. Lots of parents involved in that, kids of all ages. That was a good time here on a hill at Dix Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, guys.
Who knew there were that many sleds in Raleigh, North Carolina? I mean, they came out of the woodworks.
In fact, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. In fact, if you see one of these, could I see that right here? Dix Park is actually providing these discs for people that are coming by, so you can use one of these free of charge. It's pretty nice that they're doing this. It's definitely a fun time here in Raleigh. There you go.
All right, way to go, Parks and Rec there. And a frozen Raleigh, North Carolina, still sitting at 27 degrees. Ooh. I mean, has the cold air really stopped anyone that you've seen this morning, Justin?
No, in fact, Chris Erickson behind the lens. Let's just pan around.
Yeah,
and
I think we're good.
up there, Paul. I mean, if you see a hill, there are.
So that was, of course, our recent snowstorm, and Dix. We can cue up the PowerPoint slide. Y'all know that Dix Park is known for having some big hills. That was Harvey Hill, which is in front of the old hospital. So greatness in the making is just our new tagline, and one of our themes is great cities deserve great parks. Raleigh is certainly obviously evolving to a much bigger and sophisticated city, and with that is investing in parks. We can do the next slide. What things that Dix Park may be known for now, and we'll go to the first picture. Sledding, as our last clip just showed. Next picture. The skyline. Y'all may know that Dix Park was actually a Civil War campsite for General Sherman, and the reason they camped there was because they had a commanding view of the city. It's also the reason the old mental health hospital that is located at Dix Park, and clearly that was the Dix campus, was located there because it was a healthful, beautiful setting that would help restore the mental health of its patients. Okay, next part. Sunflowers. Kate Pierce, who is with the city, came up with this idea of planting sunflowers in our big field. Last year, we had over 100,000 people come in the month of July. We do a countdown, telling people when the blooms are, hitting. And it has just been a wonderful community. We've built picnic shelters and swings and hammock groves. So it's really sort of a bohemian, community feel out in the field in July. All right, next picture. You can't speak about Dix without honoring the legacy of its role as the mental health provider since 1856. I will say it was a white mental health hospital for many of those years, from 1880 through 1967, and then integrated. But countless people in North Carolina pass through these doors, with mental health needs, but also alcohol. I mean, any number of needs in the community. Again, founded in 1856. And then the next picture is just Dorothea Dix, who was the campaigner for mental health across the United States, from the north, served in the Union Army, but also established mental health institutions in the South. Okay. Next picture of what Dix Park is currently known for, Dreamville. We are very excited that Dreamville is coming back to Dix Park this year after a hiatus due to COVID. It will be at the park on April 2nd and 3rd, 50,000 people a day. So 100,000 people clearly, will be a big boost. Hotels and meals and restaurants in the big field at Dix. Okay, so next picture. And then speaking of big fields, one of the amazing attributes of Dix Park, it's over 300 acres, so large size, is the open spaces. And this field is sort of emulates that long meadow in Prospect Park in New York. For those of you who've been to Brooklyn, that's the idea here as part of the master plan, is to keep this open and even make it even more open than it is now. Okay, next picture. Another thing Dix Park is known for is the Nights of Light. This is sponsored by WRAL, but we had over 80,000 people who come through the park for this in their cars, and also did a run at night. That was fun. So next slide. This may not be quite as known, but last year we had our first statewide powwow. All the tribes, there are 8 tribes in North Carolina. One of our employees is Halawasaponi, organized an incredible day with thousands of folks that came from around the state, with Native American vendors, photographers, videographers. This is going to happen again in October, so I hope you will all come back and visit. This was the dance contest with one of the lead dancers. Okay, and then final photo of what Dix Park you may know of now. Now I know the farmers market is not officially part of Dix Park, but they are our close neighbor, as is NC State and a number of other government entities. And we are working with the Department of Ag. I'm trying to get Steve Troxler, who was my colleague on the Council of State, see if we can get better walking connections so that all those folks who want to go to the farmers market and get a sandwich and then walk over back and forth between the park and really leverage the agricultural heritage of this space. Okay, so that's what it's known for today. Then what will it be known for in the future? You can go, okay, and next slide. Okay, so groundbreaking this summer on Gibson Play Plaza. Y'all may know that Tom and Pat Gibson, who were home builders, moved to Raleigh in the 80s, invested their money wisely, and have donated $10 million for the naming rights for this general Play Plaza area. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that there is, this is a glimpse of some of the play areas. It's a series of different play areas. You see the STEM area in the background, meant to be all about nature-based learning, adventure play. There will be, fountains and sand bowls for toddlers. Keep moving. That opens 2024. This is something else. I was talking to Cheryl ahead of the meeting and said, a lot of people think, oh, it's a park, that's nice. And they think about, jungle gyms and swing sets. And they don't realize the economic engine that this park is. There is, if you include downtown South, which is a stone's throw from here, $3.5 billion of investment going in around the park. That also includes like $100 million on Centennial Campus, which, as you know, just rezoned a lot and have plans. We've got Atlas Stark, several developments right across the street on Lake Wheeler Road. Baker Roofing is coming up for a rezoning. They have a large industrial site right across from the farmers market. So you're seeing the site plans and rezonings circling through, but the construction, is going to start on a lot of these projects, I think, the end of this year and next. And so I think that's where it's really going to be the wake-up call as to the amount of economic investment going in because of the park. Next slide. as you know, Raleigh does not have a waterfront. The Rocky Branch Creek, for those of you who know it, currently would not be considered a very grand waterfront. It's been channelized. It is sort of in the shadow of Western Boulevard and overgrown. The idea is to reopen that back up, make it a much more welcoming and friendly, open, right, creek where kids can play and dabble in it within a berm protecting, from Western Boulevard, and it becomes the waterfront that Raleigh doesn't have. Okay, next slide. So this art is Dix Park. Obviously, we have a number of great art institutions in Raleigh and in our state. In a park like this, it just begs for, right, sort of complementing it with traveling exhibits and permanent art. This is a piece from Wings Over the City, which was a collaboration with the Consulate of Mexico. This is a traveling exhibit, and so it's open through March. We'll have a community picnic in March, on March 12th, if any of you want to come. We will be doing more of this. So I think in each fall, we'll have a traveling exhibit, and also expect some iconic pieces to go into the park, probably also around 2023-24 as we open the Plaza Play area. Okay, and then just a few more slides. African-American history, again, I think a lot of people know about Dix's past as a mental health institution. What many people don't know is that this is a Spring Hill Plantation House. This is actually owned and by NC State. It is on their property, but just right on the property line with Dix. And so this was a plantation. And as I mentioned, there are descendants that are active. Right now, we have a exhibit in the chapel at Dix called We Built This, about Black builders and architects, some of whom were descended from the enslaved, learned these crafts and built the original mental health hospital in the 1850s. So certainly an area of emphasis is to celebrate figures of African-American history that have not been brought to light, and tell stories, oral history, genealogy. So strong sort of element of that it may not be as known for now. We did have our first Juneteenth celebration in June, and we'll be having that again. The governor kicked that off, the mayor. It was a really beautiful celebration on this old 19th century space. Okay, next photo. Education. I think, COVID has changed the whole education space, and we increasingly get a lot of questions about how can we combine, children's education, STEM education, and the park. For example, that Black Builders exhibit I just mentioned, which is through Preservation NC, we have a unit for the Wake County schools that we've worked on so that children can get exposure to some of these figures, like Phil Freelon, who designed, North Carolina architect who designed the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. We also, in that play area, hope that kids from around the state will park that school bus before they head back to Harnett County or Forsyth County, get their play, game on, and get their energy out before they get back on the bus. So I think education is something we really want to emphasize at Dix. Next slide. This is July 4th. This summer, we will for the first time be hosting the official Raleigh July 4th celebration. This will be another big day at the park, and that is going to be sponsored. So if any of you have interest in sponsorships, we work Conservancy with the city on that. But we are excited to have Juneteenth, July 4th. So a busy sort of early summer at the park. Next picture. I think, a lot of you who know Dix Park know there's a lot of buildings there, about 80 structures. Many of those are in poor condition. And this is the Flower Cottage. The idea that these will, a number of these will be restored, 20 to 30 of them, and then some will come down after DHHS exits. But the idea that we will restore, again, those things that endure, things that last, the craftsmanship of some of these homes, will be a thing of beauty. All right, and then just two more slides. this is a land bridge. I know Kevin Howell is playing a strong role from NC State with the chamber, and NC State is right on our perimeter. Part of the design of that big meadow I showed you is that it then extends over to Pullen Park, over Western Boulevard through a land bridge. These are used throughout the country, number of them in parks, where it extends, right? You don't even know there's a road going underneath. This would be the pedestrian bike access also for Centennial Campus to go up to the main campus of NC State. As you know now, there's really a small bridge at Pullen, which gets really clogged and backed up. And I know because that's part of my commute and I'm sitting in that traffic frequently. So getting folks over, especially with the engineering school expansion, this would be amazing. Have to figure out, how to best execute that project. Obviously some dollars in here. And then the final slide is that Dix Park would also be known for its cultural district. Some of the museums have, City of Raleigh Museum has said they'd be interested in moving to Dix Park. African American Cultural Center / museum. I think that could be an amazing opportunity if, what if in the ground floor of the old hospital, in coming years, you got, leadership together in the state to do, say, an African American museum, cultural center, celebrating, the history of folks throughout the state on music, art, architecture, food, and had that, in that ground floor. So lots of exciting things to come. It is a big project. I am, like I said, appreciate all the partners here, both financial partners, programmatic partners, all of those who are helping to make it happen. And I will stop at that point and see if y'all have questions.
Anyone has a question for Janet, feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and ask your question to Janet. And I did see a question in the chat. Yes, the slides will be available after this presentation.
I don't have so much of a question as more of a comment. First, Janet, thank you for sharing this wonderful look at everything and getting us all even more excited about the park. My name is Sean Maroney. I'm here representing Habitat for Humanity of Wake County. And my question is it possible to get Lou to write more of the marketing copy for the park?
Yes, I think we definitely need to employ Lou in different ways.
Dan, I've got a question for you. You had a vision when you first came to this project. And so much has unfolded, and the vision that you're putting before us is very exciting, and you're sharing things I didn't know about. What has been for you, like, where have you seen the vision grow beyond what you expected it to be?
Yeah, well, I think that the depth of the stories, like you can focus on, so let me just say this, this is part of a district that used to be, right, it's the prison, the school for the deaf and the blind, it used to be a Catholic orphanage, the insane asylum. Like, this was a district where people, and I think with good intention on many occasions, right, some good intention, maybe some not so good intention, people were co-located to a space and kept away from maybe mass society. And what is really powerful for me, and I've only understood that more since working here, is that you could invert that narrative, right? And make this a place where everybody belongs, everybody has this hopeful possible future and reaches their, their potential in this space that used to be, right? Maybe not so much. So, it's a special place, not just because it's located right next to downtown, right next to NC State, the farmers market, but, and because it's so large, but because it has this very unique history. And some might say, well, do we even want to emphasize that? I mean, is that like, you drive out and you see, but I think in some ways that's what makes it so powerful. And if you can tell those stories and be honest about some of those the tough stuff. I mean, that's a difficult narrative to craft, but I think we've got a lot of wonderful people working on it through like a legacy committee and others. Again, lots of volunteers who spend a lot of time.
I've got a question, and this is Sophia Waynard of Credit Suisse. And this is such a wonderful journey that we're on, watching the evolution of Dix Park. And I love the underlying sentiment around inclusivity, around restoration, preservation, sustainability. I think it's all just really exciting, and it also kind of continues to permeate messaging that I see in other areas within the Raleigh and RTP space, which is really great to see. I guess I have actually two questions. One is, I think you mentioned about 20 to 30 of the structures are going to be restored. I'm curious, what are the thoughts around what's going to occupy those structures? And then the other question is just timing. What's the horizon look like as far as some of the things that we can start to look forward to?
Yeah, no, great questions. So as you know, right now, that flower cottage that I showed you, which is a small house, we've also renovated the chapel, which is a 1955 mid-century. That is where this pop-up museum is. You can rent that for community or corporate retreats or, music, whatever. That seats about 400. The next houses that will be restored, for those of you, there's 3 old stone houses at the entrance, the historic entrance of Dix. They look like they're in pretty bad shape on the outside. They're not bad on the inside. And we're going to vote, the board will vote on this, but they are shown in the master plan as being sort of a small welcome center, some community space, education space. We have a group, a youth conservation corps, which is high school students, very diverse, that have helped build the park, done trails, gotten rid of the English ivy growing up the trees. It's all about learning about parks management. They have no place to park, right? They just kind of throw their backpacks wherever they can during the day. So the idea is maybe they could have that as their headquarters. They work throughout the city of Raleigh and beyond. And then so some classroom space, some meeting space, we'd have some offices up there. So, and then you'd have decking that would connect all of that, where you could maybe, do the little coffee take and go, have people stop on the Greenway along Western Boulevard, have a bathroom and like a carriage house, right? So you've got some public amenities, snacks, a place to, sit, and really just those 3 stone houses were the old superintendent's house, the gatekeeper's house, and the physician's house. So that's just an example of some of the uses and all of that. A lot of public input on how we, make some of those determinations, but that was part of the master plan. I think that was the one question. There may have been another part.
Yep. The other question was just around timing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So the playground is due to open in 2024. So again, groundbreaking this summer, 2 years of construction. Those stone houses, hopefully 2023. And then the creek is, kind of underway. And then obviously we will continue doing programming, the meadow and things like that are there. It's just making the improvements and, adding bathrooms. I know that's something everybody's always, sort of basic amenities that really aren't in the park at the moment. So this will certainly stretch out over, years, decades.
Great. Yeah, that's great to hear, but it's also great to hear that there's some near-term deliverables that are really something to look forward to. So thanks for the answers to that, and also just thanks for being here.
Yeah.
This is Judy Foree. I'm a lifelong resident of the area, and I think you and I know each other from the past with all the involvements and the things I've been in. But I know it's a big property. I've not really been on it lately, but of course I've known about it my entire life. You may have mentioned this in part of your presentation. If you did, I apologize for asking, but I can't help but wonder about parking. With so many different venues you've got going to have over the whole property, I just didn't know what, because I know a lot of times developments like to pay attention to parking that's not unattractive. So, and like I said, I have not been there, so I don't know where people park when they go to those other things, all those things that are currently underway.
Well, Judy, that's a great question. And right now, of course, it is still occupied by the Department of Health and Human Services. They turned it into administrative offices after the last patient left in 2012. There's a lot of parking at the site now for all those administrative offices. So generally, I mean, if you're going to have an event with 100,000 people, that's obviously going to be challenging. But for anything, even, you know, the parking is pretty ample right now. As we redevelop this into a park and want to get rid of all that impervious surface and asphalt and make it more green, it does become more challenging. There is a parking lot that will be built with the Play Plaza. You know, we're also hoping that there will be some DHHS lots that could be overflow. There will also be, some of the developments across the street are going to have structured parking. So there could be some, shared parking there. And then we're also hoping to have the greenway, multimodal paths and connectivity. This is also bus transit. So biking, making this as connected as possible through all forms. So it's not just cars, coming through, but that's a great question.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm gonna have to visit sometime, get updated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Janet, my name is Chanel Hoff. I'm a commercial real estate broker here. And I work the Triangle, Triad, and the Sandhills. And just looking around, I think Raleigh so I lived in downtown Raleigh. My heart is still sitting somewhere there. And I miss it. I don't get there often enough. But to me, I'm not as well tuned as perhaps some of the folks on this call. But yeah, I feel like Raleigh has an opportunity here to network several the park systems and then just the Triangle in general. Is there any conversation that you know of? And I know obviously Dix is a big win, but to take that perspective and grow that vision for a park network within our Triangle area?
Yeah, no, I love that question too. There is, most specifically, there is an effort to connect Chavis and Dix. Chavis being a very historically meaningful, traditional African-American neighborhood park from the 30s, 40s, 50s. City just put a bunch of money into it. It's really not that far from Dix. So this idea of making sure there's a connectivity to that through on the ground. So that is actually something the city's working on. There's also that land bridge that would connect to Pullen Park, right? So that you can get there. More far afield, when we did sunflowers and the museum does sunflowers, we try to co-promote so that people can go see the flowers in multiple places. And the greenway connections, certainly like the Walnut Creek Greenway, which then takes you on further, through the entire, as you say, it's sort of like, this could be, just one of the crown jewel in a network of beautiful parks across Raleigh, and with those greenways that we have invested in. And then how do you activate the greenways? I know some of the development going nearby really wants to, how in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we turned our back to these little creeks. And now I think people realize those are amenities. Let's have coffee shops and, where people can sit out under a little umbrella and have their coffee looking at the creek and the bikers are going by, as opposed to channelizing it and burying it. So I'm really hopeful that we're going into a different phase that's more about that connectivity, environmental awareness, and utilizing these corridors that we've invested in.
And then since I've got you here too, I'm sorry, the one question too I meant to ask is, what about dog parks? Is that something planned in Dix? I feel like that's a huge draw for people too.
Yeah, so we do have a dog park, which is hyper popular. We do have 86,000 people a year going to the dog park. We have yappy hours for those of you. In fact, we just met with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Cody Kinsley, and he brought his dog to the meeting and he said, my dog is a big fan of Dix. So we are absolutely very dog friendly and welcome you to come out and explore the dog park.
Janet, my name is Ben Johnson. I represent a subcontractor for low voltage. How can we get involved in the bidding process to help these restorations and things like that? Is there a construction committee, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we when we renovated the chapel, we had worked with Clearscapes and Barnhill, and we had a number of subcontractors. You know, I think we well exceeded the sort of historically underutilized, you know, percentages. So that is absolutely something we want to do with a lot of these buildings. The next one's up. Like I said, we are getting just sort of refreshed contractor bids on those stone houses. So those will be put out, hopefully, if the board approves, sometime in the second quarter.
Okay.
So you could be on the lookout for that. The other, the Play Plaza, Balfour Beatty is the construction manager at risk. And so they are handling, you know, a lot of the subcontracts for that playground area. And so anyway, those are a few of the most immediately upcoming.
I mean, so we need to get with the general contractors and then go from there. Is that what you're saying? Or is there a list of where we can find out how to bid on it?
You know what, if you just send me an email, I will try to get you a more direct link.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have your email, but I'm sure it'll be posted.
Yeah, it's janet.cowell@dixparkconservancy.org. But yes, I am sure they can easily connect us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. My name is Walker. I'm with the Chamber, and I see my colleagues Adrian and Jackie light up when you mentioned the dog park. I recently moved back to Raleigh, and I had the pleasure and the privilege of living on Central Park the last 4 years I was up there. So can you speak more? And Geneva, I think I saw you drop this in the chat, how you're going to address all of the neighbors, because as the park gets more beautiful, you're also raising the value of everyone's homes, and that area is very mixed. So I'd love to hear more about that. And I just saw that we built this exhibit, which was incredible. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you, Walker. Yeah, I mean, look, that when you invest money in transit and parks, you're right, that causes a lot of disruption in local neighborhoods. I will say what's even further amplifying that issue here is that you're in a redevelopment zone. So I think, as you know, Downtown South went in, right, because it was a redevelopment zone. There are tax benefits for that entire section that was really chopped up through highways and urban redevelopment, you know, in the 60s and 70s. So a lot of land parcel assimilation has been happening since 2005 and on. So the last 20 years, this is now 80% rental. And I know there have been some stories around that. So I think it is challenging. There are some, of course, there's public housing nearby. There's some subsidized housing, but it is a dynamic that's changing, not only right near the park, but across Raleigh and Wake County. And working with, I know we had Habitat Humanity on here. I think, it's something we're all interested in, supporting the city on how we best, right, facilitate some housing options. I don't think I have any, hugely, perfect answers on how we do that, but it's certainly listening and trying to work with the city on those, on those issues. I will say a lot of our donors care a lot. The Gibsons who donated worked with Habitat for Humanity to do the Builders Blitz, so care deeply about that. The Goodmans, who were AJ Fletcher, has done a lot around housing. So I think we absolutely see it as both, and we wouldn't not want to invest in Publix because of disruption, but then it does require active policy to make sure that there is still some affordable housing.
All right, everybody, we would like to thank everyone for their wonderful questions. And again, a very special thank you to you, Janet. Thank you for sharing both your vision and passion for Dix Park, but also your lessons in leadership and also the words of wisdom from your dear friend, Lou. All right. I would like to also, again, thank each one of you for attending the C-Suite's Perspective. And again, a special thank you to all of our event sponsors, our diamond sponsors, C3 Advantage, Marsh & McLennan Agency, and our series sponsors, the Carolina Hurricanes, who are having a great year, City Club Raleigh, and Green Resources. Just a couple notes, please. I hope everyone can join us on February 17th for the Community Success Forum. In partnership with RTI International, A Better Wake developed a blueprint recommendation in 4 areas: education, health, economic mobility, and criminal justice. And this year's Community Success Forum will highlight the findings and recommend from this report. The event will be virtual and is free to all of our chamber members. As we look ahead in April, there's still space available for the Intercity Visit and Leadership Conference. It's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah, from April 24th through the 27th. This conference is going to bring together 150 business leaders, elected officials, community stakeholders, and everyone to learn from other markets. And lastly, don't forget to register for our next C-Suites Perspective that's going to be on April 22nd with Trey Rabin, the president of AT&T North Carolina. And you can find out about all of these wonderful events on the Chamber's website, raleighchamber.org. And we ask that you please don't leave us quite yet. We're offering you virtually networking from 10 until 10:30. And so at this point, we're going to break everyone up into groups. And after 10 minutes, you're going to be moved to another breakout session to meet another group of folks. So I hope everybody stays safe, stays well. And as always, thank you for being a part of the program today.